This is Viterbi Voices, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more.
Directly from our students, faculty, and other members of our engineering community. All right here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Welcome back to Viterbi Voices. As usual, I am one of your hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma, Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And my name is Audrey Roberts. I'm a senior studying mechanical engineering here at USC.
And joining us today is, I believe this is your first episode. Is this your first episode, Emily?
This is my first time on the podcast. Hi, everyone.
Welcome to the podcast. Tell everybody who you are.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily London. I am a sophomore majoring in electrical and computer engineering.
So, Emily, you bring an episode to us, which, if I'm not correct, is all about or if I am correct, sorry, I'm tired, is all about art, right? And how engineers can still be involved in their art.
Yeah, so today's episode is 3 different interviews from 3 different artists within Viterbi. So we have Stephanie Kehoe, who paints shoes and actually sells them to different clients. In addition to being a mechanical engineer, we're also talking to Julia De La Rosa, who is involved in USC's choir and their concert choir and performs with them, in addition to her engineering course load. And we also get to talk to Leon Dernberger, who is a junior studying computer science, and he actually produced musical scores for a lot of the short films and movies that are going out for USC's film school. So I really wanted to look at how, being an engineer, while it is a huge part of your identity, because it is, a lot of time and really important, but you can also retain those other facets of like your individuality and creative expression on top of being an engineer.
This is great. We have so many students that always ask about, is there a way that I can continue with my artistic, talents, whether that be through coursework or stuff on the side. And so I'm really excited to get this episode out there, Emily. Thank you for bringing it to us. And for all of you out there, if you're interested in art or you have some sort of passion for art, well then keep your ear holes open and let's go on through this episode. We'll see you on the other side.
Hey everyone, this is Julia De La Rosa. We're very excited to have her on the podcast today for Viterbi Voices, and we're going to get started right now. Julia, why don't you give us a quick introduction about yourself, your involvement with campus, and the art that you do?
Oh, okay. Hi everybody. I'm Julia. I am a sophomore studying mechanical engineering, and my involvements on campus, so I'm involved in Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, or SHIP, as those might know it on the streets. I'm involved in chamber singers, which is the choir it's an auditioned choir at USC. I am also an SI leader for calculus, which is supplemental instruction for those who may not know. Oh, and I'm also Intel study leader for Center of Engineering Diversity. So I do a little bit of stuff. Just
a bit, one could say.
Just
a tad. Well, thank you for introducing yourself. Obviously, you're super involved. As we know, this podcast today is going to be about the art that you do. So right. You mentioned your involvement in the chamber choir. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and kind of the art that you do and what got you into it?
Sure. So I'll just give a mild backstory of the art that I have done for anyone that might be in high school still. So I played violin and was in choir throughout high school. I've been doing it for years now. And those are my 2 really big involvements. I chose choir when I got to USC because singing was more important to me. And obviously engineering was important to me too. That's what I majored in. But I knew I wanted to stick with something that involved music. So I went the choir route. And yeah, I joined chamber singers this year. I was in USC concert choir last year. They're both auditioned choirs. One is a little bit bigger. And last year, my involvement on campus with choir, it's just for anyone that knows what choir is, we just sang together and we had some fun little travel stuff that we got to do. We got to go to Las Vegas and we toured. So we like performed some of our set for some high schools in Las Vegas, and that was fun. And then we get to do like retreats once every semester. Chamber Singers does this stuff too, but it's an interesting experiment with doing it online because I was just put in that choir this semester, so everything's been online. And that kind of looks a little bit interesting because we can't really sing with each other, which is what a choir is. It's an ensemble. So yeah, it's been an interesting little experiment.
Yeah, no, singing online, I don't know how you guys do that. I would definitely love to hear more about that. But also, you know, I just visualize like a bunch of like the Zoom boxes, like kind of like off key, but you know,
completely off time, like no one with
like,
each other.
Feedback and like mics cutting off, all in all. But also, like you mentioned, you're super heavily, and you've been doing this for so long. Like, what got you, like, why do you continue to be in choir? And like, beyond just what got you into it in the first place, like, what does it make you feel?
Sure. So I always thought that I was going to become a musician. I mean, I felt like it was in my blood. I used to sing in like talent shows when I was a child. So like I've always loved music, and I've always felt like, I mean, doing something in regards to like what you love and what you're passionate about is like necessary for us to like keep going, especially in college. And I mean, it got me through all my high school years. It was more of like a safe space. It's definitely something that like, not to like what's the word, not to like put down engineering for this, because engineering does do a lot of group work and group activity, and that's great, but I feel like there's such a competitive environment in engineering that there are some times that you can maybe feel like you're kind of just striving to do things on your own, whereas choir, it's like you can't do that. It's always been this group effort, and you have to connect with everyone in the group. You have to feel some kind of connection to what you're doing and what you're producing. And I've always loved that aspect of it. I mean, so many of my close friends I've met through the musical ensembles that I've been in, and it really just brings me peace while I'm going through all of the academics that might feel a little bit more like I'm kind of doing it alone, or might get a little bit more stressful, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned kind of like the difference between the collaborative environment of choir and kind of how like you have to work with each other, because like you can't just like go off on your own, whereas in engineering you have to be on your own a lot of the time. Like how would you say, do you bring some of that collaborative like thought process back into engineering, or like vice versa? Do you have any kind of like engineering stuff that impacts like your choice in choir?
Yeah, so I mean, music and like the aspects of engineering are always like interconnected and related more than people really realize. But I think in general, just like being a part of an ensemble. In high school, I was actually like president of my choir, which was an interesting little experiment. But that, like, I feel like being in that position just gives me a lot of like social skills, I guess, if that's the word. And like, I don't know, I feel like in an engineering environment, should I mention, do you remember the communications guy that came to talk to us?
Oh my goodness, the communications guy. Wait, please like, tell that story.
Don't know how to talk to people. Like, they're all very introverted and like don't know how to do presentations, which isn't true for everybody, but I think for like going through STEM classes without like, I guess, experience in more liberal arts or communications or, you know, anything that has to do with art classes, I feel like being a part of those things definitely gives you the upper hand in terms of like being, I mean, first of all, empathy. Like choir is really good for helping with knowing how to feel empathy towards other people, which is really important as an engineer. And then again, just that collaborative nature. So like if you're put into a group project for engineering, it's kind of like, I know a lot of people that just hate group projects because, I mean, no one wants to do that collaborative thing. Like everyone kind of just wants to go do their own thing and like earn their own grade or whatever. But like in the real engineering world, that's really an important skill that you need.
So you kind of talked a lot about like what, both like engineering and like the social skills and kind of like that impact, but also like I want to know more about like your identity as like an engineer and also as like a musician. Like, what do you identify yourself with more, and like what does that really mean to you?
You mean like in the sense that I'm studying engineering and just kind of doing music?
I mean, it's up to how you feel, right? That's the quintessential question. Yeah. It's like, are you an engineer and artist? Are you an artist who is an engineer? And kind of like the nuances of that identity, I think is really interesting. Love to hear more about.
Well, right now I'm only a sophomore in college, so it's kind of hard to say. I feel like I definitely identify in both almost equally, even though it's like kind of weird to say because I'm definitely majoring in engineering and spending more of my time doing engineering right now. But like, I don't know. I feel like there are definitely like in my first year's experience, there were definitely points in time where like the two definitely collided with each other. Like I had to choose one or the other. And that was like, how am I supposed to do that? Because like I can't, like it's near impossible for me to like want to do one over the other. In engineering, I definitely feel like it's more of something that I would have to major in to be able to like do something, because obviously I have to learn how to be an engineer. And for music, it's for me just a continuation of how I have been trained and just keeping that afloat, which has been very hard, especially not majoring in it. But I am where I am now, and I would like to minor in it given the opportunity. So yeah, I definitely identify with both pretty equally, and I think that like career wise, I will try to incorporate both pretty equally.
Cool. That actually raises up 2 points. One, can you tell me more about like your decision or consideration of taking a minor in music and kind of like your plans for that?
Sure. So I would like to be able to minor in vocal studies. I was supposed to audition for that at the end of last semester, which unfortunately the end of last semester did not go as planned for anybody. And being sent home was a very stressful, very, I guess just like, I mean, it was so bizarre. It was like kind of out of nowhere for us. And it was very weird. But when I got home, it was like, I just couldn't sing anymore, which there was, I know, you're like, what?
Wait, what?
Which like I literally have been trying to figure it out since like March, because I was there on campus, we were doing choir consistently like every single week, and it was everything was so out of nowhere. It was like we got the email right before spring break and we were sent home, and then choir was kind of like up in the air as to what we would be doing, and then we were supposed to do a virtual choir project. And so that was the first time that I had sung since being sent home. And I tried to do it and it was like nothing came out. I had completely lost the ability to sing. And so like, you're like, whoa, that's weird. And for me as a singer, I was like so terrified because that's half my identity right there, just completely gone. And I didn't know why. And there are so many different reasons behind that. Could have been nodules, could have been pulps, could have been paralysis, could have been corona, honestly, but it didn't go away. And it has stayed through the months of the pandemic, and I kind of put it on the back burner to kind of just focus. I was like, okay, if I can't do that right now, I'll focus on engineering. And being in choir this semester, I kind of had to deal with it. And we figured out that there was nothing like physically wrong with my voice. Like it was kind of just being put in the really stressful situation like I had some kind of muscle memory that had to do with stress when singing, so that I just could not do it. And that is a lot. Like, that's a lot. And it's a very different situation that we're in now. It's very particular to the situation that we are in now with the pandemic and everything. But I think that it also has to do a lot with like just taking care of yourself and your mental health, especially because I mean, being put back in my home situation and everything was just so, I mean, it was not at all what I wanted for my second semester. It's not at all what anybody wanted for their second semester. And so like some really weird things happened, and that just happened to be one of them. So long story short, I was not able to audition for that minor because I couldn't sing. So that is a to be continued kind of story for me, and wherever my voice goes, we'll see.
Wow, that is quite the story. Wow, that's crazy. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but it also does make sense. I feel like those like mental health is so linked, especially like singing, like that's your art form and that's your identity.
Right.
Like that,
like you wouldn't think that would be something that would just make me not be able to sing.
I mean, it makes sense. Like the voice is like an instrument, right? Like you can't play the violin in the middle of a fire, right? And I feel like your body is your instrument, and like coronavirus is like that meme where it's like the dog sitting in the room on fire. Like you can't like play a violin or a piano if it's on fire. So I guess that kind of makes sense. But wow, I hope that you can sing soon and that it gets back to normal. We will be hoping
it is a little bit back to normal now. It is definitely better now that I figured it out.
I'm glad that you're figuring it out and that it is figured out. And kind of like, I guess one of my last kind of questions is do you hope, or how do you want to continue to kind of like pursue music and singing and choir like in your future and in your career or otherwise?
That's something that I'm figuring it out every single day. I know that I eventually want to be able to do both, whether or not that's doing both separately or incorporating both of them, because there are so many ways that you can incorporate music into engineering. Like there's audio engineering and like so much stuff with optimizing acoustics and like all this stuff that you could get into, that I could definitely be working with. So I don't know. It's definitely something that I still am trying to figure out. It might just end up me doing some musical gigs whilst being some kind of engineer. Whatever. I think my interpretation is like whatever I feel like I need to be putting into the world, whatever I feel like is something that is calling my attention, whether that be some kind of worldly problem, some kind of thing that needs to be fixed, or just a time that I need to do something for myself and have a little bit of fun. I think that's kind of how I see it.
Thank you so much for coming into the podcast today and sharing your experience as a Viterbi artist. You're obviously doing incredible things, and I'm so excited to see how, your choir goes and how your music goes. You're, gone through some rough patches, but I think you're on the up and up.
All right, Stephanie, if you could just give me a quick introduction of yourself and your involvements on campus, as well as like the art that you do.
Sure. So my name's Stephanie Kehoe. I'm a junior studying mechanical engineering. I recently joined Makers this semester, and I've been involved in a few other clubs throughout my time at USC. I did 3D4E for a year, and then last year I did the Aero Composites team for the Formula SAE racing. And over COVID, I started my own custom shoe painting business, which has been so much fun and has really allowed me to bring creativity back into my life.
Yeah, no, that's so great. That's such a creative medium. What got you into like the shoe painting and painting in general?
I started painting in high school, and it was just one of those things that I think naturally gifted at. It wasn't I have to work really hard in school to get all of the math and engineering down, and painting is something that I can really just do, and I've always just been able to do. So it's more of like a relaxing thing that I can take time off and work on. And the shoes specifically, I remember I bought my first pair of Air Force Ones, and I was like, oh my God, I want these shoes really bad, but everyone and their mother has these shoes. So what can I do to make them a little bit cooler? And I remember I painted my own shoes, and I was so horrified because I had just bought these super expensive shoes, and I made like a big black line down my shoe, and I was like, what have I just done? But it ended up turning out really, really cool. And then I got so many comments on them that I was like, I think I could probably do something like this. So I put it on social media, and a few of my videos blew up. So then I just started selling them.
That is so, so cool. I think it's amazing that like you're selling shoes and creating that. You said that like doing this art brings creativity like back into your life and back into your major. How would you say that relationship between being a mechanical engineer and like, creating this art and like selling these shoes?
Well, I guess I could start back sort of. I chose mechanical engineering because I was told that it was probably the most creative engineering route to take, and that engineers really are the designers of anything that is made. But my freshman and sophomore year, in terms of the classes I was taking, it really seemed to be a lot of like rote mathematics and a lot less design courses and stuff like that. So I got kind of frustrated and was pretty confused about whether or not mechanical engineering was actually for me, because it seemed to be so not creative. But then last semester I took a course in Auckland because I studied abroad, and it was a design course where we were posed with this question, and we just had to literally design it, use the math to actually design something that we wanted to make. So at that same time, I started painting shoes, and I was like, designing is relevant in engineering. I just need to find how it's relevant. And I've been looking into some product designing, especially internships and stuff. I saw one at Nike that was where you literally designed the shoe. And then I kind of deep dived into what mechanical engineers do at like fashion companies or at creative outlets. And I found that there are a lot of positions for people to just create things, and it doesn't have to be, the next car or the next airplane. And not that those things aren't interesting, they just don't necessarily match my creative side as much as, the design aspects of fashion or stuff like that.
Right. So kind of going off of that and like using your art skills and your design skills in engineering and like in your future career, like what does being an artist mean to you, or what does being an engineer mean to you? Like how do those relate?
I think my idea of an engineer, again, I don't really know what an engineer is, and I think that's a common problem that a lot of students run into is what will I actually be doing? But the basis of understanding that I have is engineers are responsible for creating things to help society move forward. And I think that there's a big differentiation between scientists and engineers, because engineers look at the human population and say, how can I make it easier to live, and what devices can I create that will help society move forward, whereas, scientists and researchers are more interested in kind of like the phenomenon why things happen. So I think that there's a really big central role for engineers to help people in the best way that they can. And I think that with a creative mindset, those solutions are a lot better and a lot more relevant.
Yeah, wow. Great. Thank you for touching on how like kind of like that creative mindset and those art skills impact like design and like the product development process. Can you talk more about how like those art skills are you seen in engineering, or vice versa? Has anything from your engineering background helped you with your art?
Sure. So I've kind of me and my family have actually talked a lot about this. You talk to your family about what you're doing with your life. And I think that there's a big kind of crossover between painting and engineering, not in the sense of what you're doing, because I think you're doing completely unrelated things in a lot of ways, but it's the same concept as, you're starting a project, either engineering or painting, and you have this blank canvas in front of you. And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but figuring out how you're going to fill that whole canvas or complete this whole project is a process from beginning to end. And I think that there's a lot of similarities between, the different steps you take, the amount of times you have to go back over a section in a painting, or the amount of times that you have to reiterate something for engineering, and just kind of that drive to repeat the process until you get the final product that you want.
Can you talk more about just the sneaker painting itself, and like the painting stuff that you're doing? Because I think that's really cool. I'd love to get like more input on like what you're at, like what designs and stuff that you're making.
Sure. So the first pair I did was for myself, and the first pair I did, I just found a pair of shoes on the internet that I liked, and it was like this cool dragon design, and so I did it. And then I realized that I couldn't sell that design because you can't just sell replicas from the internet. So I bought a pair for my mom for Mother's Day, and I painted some poppies on the heels, and everyone really liked those. I think it was fun to have something cute and dainty, and usually it's like color blocking is really common for shoe painting, and then there are just like some specific designs that a lot of people hit on, and I think that it's really interesting to try to bring my own painting that I would do on a canvas onto the shoe. So that's more of what I try to do. And then I try to really interact with the shoe when I paint it. So if I'm painting a snake, I try to make it wrap around a specific section. Or, I think that the shoe is a really cool canvas to work on. And I think that I take advantage of the different shapes and the way that they can actually interact with the shoe itself.
Yeah, wow. So how do you like decide? I know you said the blank canvas, but like, how do you decide what you're going to paint on the shoe? You said like poppies and flowers. Do you have a general theme, or do you just kind of do like a different thing every time?
Well, my mom suggested the flowers, so that kind of started from there. And then I kind of tried a couple of different other flowers. And then I take a lot of custom requests, because I ask that the customer sends me a pair of shoes just so I'm not liable for any shipping or anything while I'm in school, because that was just like too overwhelming for me to handle. But then I also invite them to think of whatever they would want on a shoe. So someone really liked Star Wars, and so they asked for a Star Wars themed shoe, and then I kind of try to work with the person on, what's their favorite color, what color do they wear most in their clothing, how crazy do they want their design to be, and then I'm able to kind of gauge and then design something, and then sometimes I replicate their custom design on other shoes, or I kind of take different ideas from different people's custom requests and then make my own design out of it.
Wow. So would you say that like process of kind of getting that customer feedback and back and forth, does that kind of like emulate the product design process of like general products like in engineering and stuff? Would you say that that's like similar or relevant?
Yeah, I think that is honestly this has been a really good practice for me in terms of, asking what the customer wants, trying to get the best idea of what they want beforehand, doing iterations. I recently got Procreate, so I can give them iterations and make sure that we're all on the same page before we start. And then, doing I send them periodically the design throughout the painting process, and at the end, make sure that they're okay with everything. And I think that that'll be really useful ways of conversation in product design. So I think that, this is definitely some tangential practice for that.
Wow, that is honestly so cool. I'm kind of going off of that. Do you hope to continue to pursue like art in the future in your career, like as you advance, like out of college?
I hope so. I mean, I would say my biggest dream since I was a kid was to just be a straight up artist. If I could just paint all day, every day, and somehow make a living off of that, I would. But in today's age, I don't think that specifically studio artistry is a big profession anymore. So I'm trying to find ways that studio artistry can be involved in other things, such as engineering. And when I started doing shoes, I kind of realized that there's this whole industry of wearable art and art and fashion. So I'm hoping that I can try to get involved in that, and maybe not necessarily painting physically, even though I'd love to. But I think that in product design or fashion design, there's a ton of both engineering and that actual like sitting down in front of a piece of paper and designing something.
Definitely. Wearable tech and like wearable fashion is something that's super cool to me too. I just think that's like so cool, and like that intersection of like fashion and then art and engineering is just really, really interesting to me. I don't have any more specific questions for you, but if you want like to talk about anything else related to your art or engineering or any feelings you have associated with that, like feel free to do so.
I guess something that has become more and more clear to me that definitely wasn't clear to me when I first started at USC is like, and I know this sounds really cliche and I've heard this a million times, but it's just starting to make sense. Like there is a spot for everyone in engineering. And I would say I came in as someone who thought about transferring to Roski every day because I wanted to be an artist so bad. And how when I went to class, you know, I just enjoyed different things than the kids in my class. You know, I liked to get dressed up. I liked to do makeup. I liked to do all of these different kinds of things that, you know, made me feel kind of like hyper feminine and I don't know, in a way vain, and kind of discredited my interests because I was like, well, if I'm going to be an engineer, I probably shouldn't care what I'm wearing to class. You know, I probably shouldn't spend the next hour working on my makeup when I could be doing a homework assignment. But, you know, that's something that I really was interested in and I really like to do. And I think I was pretty miserable for the first year because I was trying to tamp down all the other things that I like to do to try to fit into this, like, USC engineering persona. And I've really come to realize that engineering is such a diverse, like, field, and you can do anything you want in it. And there are so many different niche things that are available. I mean, you can really Google any company and I can almost guarantee you they will have an engineering position. So really just keeping that faith that you do belong there and that there are more options than maybe what's offered at the career fair or what's spoken about in your classes.
Thank you so much. That is such an important piece of information to share. I totally like relate to that feeling of like, oh, like you enter your engineering class for the first time and you feel like you stick out because like you're interested in like makeup or whatever else, or like I want to like look cute to class, and like everyone else is like, what are you doing, right? You definitely feel like bad at first for having your interest. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's super important. On that note, thank you so much for your time and coming in to talk with me today for the podcast.
Sure.
We really appreciate it.
Hi, Leon. Welcome to Viterbi Voices. We are so excited to have you on here today. First off, can you just give us a quick introduction about yourself, your involvements on campus, and specifically the art that you do?
Yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Leon Dernberger. I am a junior studying computer science, and I'm pursuing a minor in neuroscience. I originally am from Columbus, Ohio, and I grew up with a lot of classical music in my life. Both of my parents are classical musicians. My sister is pursuing classical violin. And then, so I didn't go into classical piano, which is what I trained in, but I've been doing a lot of music production, especially in quarantine. So, yeah.
All right. Okay. So I see that you have a background in classical music, but you've switched to more music production, and you're doing that a lot in quarantine and in college. So what kind of triggered that shift for you?
I think I personally feel that the role that music plays in my life is more of a self-expressive mode of kind of an outlet, I guess. And I think that classical music, although there are many ways to express yourself during the course of a piece, it takes like months to learn a single piece. And I guess I just didn't have the patience for that. So instead of playing what a old dead person wants me to play, I think personally, I find that music production and being able to choose my sounds and choose the melodies and choose the harmonies, just like all of that is so much more freeing to me. And I've really been enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Can you talk more about music production and kind of the projects that you've done or worked on for those of us who might not be as familiar with that field and what it means?
Yeah, so music production is basically the process of creating a song, whether it's electronic music or stuff that you record, and kind of putting the whole thing together in a digital audio workstation. So there's a bunch of software. Many people have probably heard of GarageBand. That's like the classic Apple DAW, but I have used Ableton starting a few months ago. Actually, starting from last year, around sophomore year, I started using Ableton, and it's generally the process is just creating different layers of tracks. So you kind of have a view where you can see each individual kind of instrument, and you layer them on top of each other and kind of mix and balance them all. And it's been a really cool journey. I actually started doing a little bit on the side in high school, where I kind of had a alter ego where I just made songs as memes. I made a Damn Daniel remix when I was a sophomore that kind of popped off at my high school. And ever since then, I've been chasing that high. I think I peaked back then, but you know, but so ever since then, I've just been working on small things. I just come up with like melodies in my head, and then they eventually translate to music. And I don't really release a lot of it. I'm waiting until I get a little bit better. But one project that I have been working on that is being released is one of my friends in the School of Cinematic Arts, Israel Gomez. He and Ethan Denning and one other person were working for their a class project and released a film called The Writer's Room. And I helped to produce the soundtrack. So that was a super fun project to work on a few months ago. And yeah, that's going to be releasing on Halloween. I'm not sure when this podcast is releasing, but definitely go check it out. It's probably going to be released by then. So yeah, it's very spooky.
I can guarantee to you that will be released before this podcast. But okay. Kind of going off of that, I think that aspect of collaboration, especially within USC and within friends outside of the engineering school, brings up a really kind of interesting point on like how your majors are different and how did you like get into that? Like, how did you meet those people and how did you start that work with them?
Yeah, so me and Israel met freshman year. We were both in McCarthy, which is one of the dorms for freshmen. And it was, I think we both had a mutual friend and who's also in Viterbi, shout outs to Julius. And then we just kind of met each other through, just hanging out in a dorm together. We eventually started playing Smash together. And then, so then we decided to room together, both through our mutual friend. And from there, we just got really close during the process of living together sophomore year. And I started working a lot more on my music production starting at the beginning of sophomore year. I didn't really prioritize it. I definitely picked it up a lot more in quarantine, but I definitely started that path during sophomore year. So he was there for that. I was there for the production of several films that happened in our suite. So yeah, that really cross-disciplinary stuff was really, really fun. And then I called Ethan sometime this past summer, told him all the stuff that I'd been working on. And then I think they were working together on the project. And then Ethan just let Israel know that I was I was producing a lot more. So I think I'd always mentioned to him that I'd love to work with him on a project. So that's just kind of how it happened, just through some friendships,
That's super cool. I absolutely love that you can get that kind of experience, especially at USC, kind of that's being fostered with the interdisciplinary work. But you also mentioned that, you didn't start doing this a lot until like your sophomore year, and kind of that shift between your identity as a musician and as an engineer. And I think it'd be interesting to look at how that shift from classical to more music production. Would you say any of that has to do with your kind of journey as an engineering student? You said you were a computer science major. Would you say that there's any relationship there?
Yeah, I definitely think that I have fallen in love with creating things. I think like ever since I started doing robotics in middle and high school, just really the grind of putting work into something that you can produce, and it's just something that completely belongs to you. All the ideas that were put into it belong to you. I really love that process. It's very, very rewarding. And I think in a lot of ways, music production is like engineering. You need to build the architecture first. You need to determine what kind of song you want to make. That's kind of the architecture. You need to focus on each individual component and put them all together in a very relational way. And music, math, and computer science are all very, very interconnected, and I think that relationship has definitely spawned that creative side. And then just in terms of how it is different from classical music, I will always love classical music, and I will always love playing Chopin and Rachmaninoff and everything. But being able to express everything on my own and having those ideas be for myself, I think, was one of the big reasons why music production was so illuminating to me.
Yeah, well, you actually kind of tied that in perfectly for me with how music and engineering are closely related. That's what I love to hear and kind of what I want to look at with this podcast. Kind of going off of that, have you learned any skills from your music that you brought into your engineering work, or vice versa? Have you learned anything through your classes or extracurriculars at Viterbi that are more engineering focused that you've brought into your music?
I think nothing like super technical. That has been bridged between the two. Wait, actually, there sort of has. Okay, so I do a lot of work with USC makers. I should have mentioned that in my introduction. I am very heavily affiliated with USC makers. I'm part of their e-board. It's been probably one of the most defining experiences of my college time, and through that, I've been able to work on electrical focused projects. And one thing that we learned in there, and just like that I've gotten exposure to, is kind of analog signal processing. And that is huge in music. I use a synthesizer called Serum in my music, and kind of understanding the way that waves combine together. It's very electrical engineering inspired, because back in the 80s, like they literally had to use electrical engineering to produce these waves. So I think just like having that kind of border between my music and my electrical engineering projects, just like learning more about Fourier transforms as well, which is how to discern frequencies from a specific wave. That's been super useful to like kind of know what's going on behind the scenes very technically in my music. And just in kind of the soft skills area, a lot of computer science is watching YouTube tutorials. And I never had the patience for watching YouTube tutorials. But it was pretty much the only way that I learned how to pick up a lot of my skills with music production. And I had to like kind of learn that self-control and learn that patience and learn how to follow along with something. So I think that skill, honestly, just like being able to sit down and really grind out a 1-hour YouTube tutorial, that's been helpful in a lot of my computer science endeavors.
Wow, that's really cool to hear kind of about the relationship, and also all the signal processing stuff from makers and from your other endeavors is really interesting to look at. One big part of college is identity, right? And how you identify yourself with. And I think engineering, unlike other majors, is one that kind of sucks you into that as your identity. So, but music is also kind of a similar one where that kind of becomes a huge part of yourself. So with your identity yourself, what would you say you identify with more, an artist or an engineer, or is it kind of evenly split for you?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I'd say I identify more with the artistic side of myself than the engineering side. I love computer science and I love solving these big problems and developing algorithms and learning about operating systems. But I think the artist in me, this is going to sound pretty corny, but the artist in me just, I love thinking about philosophy and that intersection with myself, and just like going through the process of self-actualization in college has been an interesting time. And I have learned a lot about the sort of soft side of humanities rather than like the really logical 1-0 binary side of computer science. And I think like exploring those ideas are more linked to the human experience than I think that pure logic could ever achieve. And I think like approaching from that top down view of philosophy and humanity is something that I personally identify with a lot, and I try to approach problems that way. And I think in that, I use my self-expression coming from that angle, I think, And that's not to say that they can't like intersect at all. You look at AI research and really the tip top and of that field, and philosophy and AI are one and the same, right? There's so much intersection between those fields. But I think just in terms of the engineering side of myself, I definitely associate less with that and more with the arts.
Yeah, it's kind of a follow-up question to that, but you mentioned philosophy and AI and also kind of engineering and artists, and how there's like an intersection there. Would you say there is any crossover? And you also mentioned that you're a neuroscience minor, sorry, not major. And kind of like, that's not exactly music or like engineering, right? So how did you come to that decision too?
Yeah, so I think there definitely is a lot of intersection between music, philosophy, and AI. I'm not sure that the overlap exists in the same place, but there definitely is a lot of computational stuff that goes into music, a lot of formula, a lot of, just in terms of Western traditions of music, it is very modular in a way. That's very funny to see. And I think down the road, we will end up seeing a lot more about the intersections between AI and music and kind of how that relates to the human experience. Because the whole question of AI is just like, if we're viewing it from like a human-centric AI, it's like, how do we build a machine that thinks like a human? And I think like there's something intrinsic to music that just like resonates with our brains. I don't know why, I don't know how. And but I think like understanding that relationship between the human experience and our love for music will provide key insights down the road for human-centric AI, But just in terms of why I chose neuroscience, I really love AI, as you can probably tell. And I enjoy thinking about how we can develop AI to kind of model nature's engineering. Because when you think about it, our brains are the best computers on Earth right now. And just like you see Google with their CAPTCHA imaging, like trying to detect traffic lights, like we can do that already. Like, isn't that pretty cool? So like Google's already working on that. So, and even through my initial studies in neuroscience, because I'm not that far into the minor, but just seeing the relationships between certain algorithms and certain brain structures is absolutely, it's absolutely crazy. I love my intro to neurobiology class right now. For example, one thing that we learned about was just like how the medial olive, which is something that helps like detect where sounds are coming from, it kind of functions similar to a flash ADC, where it like determines it like gets the analog signal and transmits it into a specific neuron that fires depending on what angle the sound is coming from. And it does that very similarly by like narrowing down based on instead of resistance, it's timing. But like there's an isomorphism definitely between those two. And just like I think that's studying those kinds of connections and seeing how our brains and our algorithms are linked is just, I think it's the coolest thing that I could ever learn, and might as well get that done in college while I can, you know.
Yeah, that's fascinating. The fact that there's like similarities in those structures, I did not even know that, and that's crazy to think about. Might have to have you back for a podcast on more CS type stuff. But kind of my last question for you is, if you hope to continue kind of working on music in the future, whether through your career or just kind of after you leave college.
Yeah, I definitely think that I am going to continue working on music for my whole life. I think that music production is such a great way to represent myself. And I don't think that I would ever lose that. I think it's too important for me. I definitely see in the future, like in my spare time, working on songs. I have ideas for albums, and just like, you know, as I develop these skills for music production and kind of gear up to becoming a better music producer, like I feel like once I hit a certain quality in my songs, I'd be comfortable with releasing a lot more of my work. I think for now, though, I'll just keep working behind the scenes and figure out how to get better, you know. But I definitely see myself later on never giving that up. It's very cool, and it's a really great experience.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that you plan to do it in the future. And on that note, I think that wraps up all the questions I have for you today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Emily. I really enjoyed that episode. As someone myself who's kind of interested in keeping up with art as an engineering student.
Where were you in this process, Emily? When you were in high school, is art kind of was that your passion that you wanted to continue on? Is that kind of why you looked into this?
No, actually, I was involved in choir for a little bit, but I just noticed that so many people around me in Viterbi were doing all of these amazing artistic things. And I just think it's really important to know, like, as a prospective student, I was definitely concerned or worried if I could keep up some of the stuff I did outside of engineering and some of my other interests. I'm minoring in cultural diplomacy, so I'm really interested in IR and stuff like that. But I think it's really interesting how music and art in general can also work with engineering. I really value the creative aspect of engineering, and I think that that's something that isn't talked about as much. And you kind of see in the episode where people actually drew a lot of similarities between their work in their art and also their work in engineering.
What's blown you away the most about someone that you've heard about, or even on this episode, where you're like, you're doing what?
Yeah, so in Leon's interview, he talked about how AI and music works because he's a computer science student, and I had never realized that artificial intelligence and music could actually work together. And seeing how Viterbi enables you to continue that parallel and take your music work and actually analyze it, both between like audio processing stuff, like actually looking at the waveforms from an electrical engineering perspective, as well as like a more creative and abstract ways. It's just really cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for getting this episode out. I really appreciate it. And for all of you students that are still wrapping up your applications, I know it's the weekend after Thanksgiving. We're all a little still dealing with that full belly from all that turkey and stuff. Make sure that you wrap those things up if you want to be considered for merit-based scholarships. The application deadline for merit scholarship consideration is December 1st. So you got just a few days here to get it out under the wire. Go to commonapp.org. Make sure you select USC as the school you're applying to. Complete the USC supplement in addition to the common application, and make sure that you're listing one of the Viterbi school majors as your first choice major. And we'll make sure and get that in. And we look forward to that. Make sure you get your application by December 1st in order to be considered for merit scholarships. Ladies, thank you so much. And everyone else, we will see you on the next episode.